It is 10 o'clock.
All right, let me get rid of this. All right, everybody who's ever coming in early this morning on the day before Thanksgiving, I appreciate it. I know a lot of people are probably traveling. And if you're not traveling, or if you are traveling watching us, well, thank you very much. We got Bigfoot Anon, of course. Everybody knows that crazy guy. We got Jeff Harding. He's been on the show before and just just an awesome guy and all that. So, guys, the reason we're coming in today, the reason I wanted Jeff, especially on this show, is I want to speak some truth about what the title basically is. You know, when is it time to come out to start talking about the Bigfoots, about the UFOs, about the paranormals? And if you do, you know, can there be issues with it? And what I'm talking about, guys, is when you make yourself available to the world, doing a show, hosting, going on shows, you're putting yourself out there. And as soon as you put yourself out there, it can have an effect on your life in so many different ways that people, you know, think they can. What I mean is it can affect your job. You know, Jeff has said it himself. You know, I've been in management positions, supervisor positions. There's things you're not allowed to talk about. And there's things they never say you're not supposed to talk about, but you know you can't because you start talking about paranormal, UFOs, and Bigfoots, they'll find a way to get you out. I mean, that is just the real, true reality of life. And let me explain to you guys what happened to me. And I like to hear Jeff and stuff, you know, his stuff. When, of course, I worked as a manager for cable companies for like 16, 20 years. So I've been in management position, leadership positions. You know, before in the last year, I got laid off from a medical job where I was in charge of a warehouse. We delivered medical supplies to houses, to hospitals, to help people heal. Simple as that. Well, right before the pandemic hits, I got called in on a Friday, and I had a perfect record. I know I'm not trying to shoot myself, but perfect record. Workers love working with me. They love me being in charge because I treat everybody with respect. I treat everybody like a human being. Well, I come in on a Friday. They said, Eric, we apologize. We're eliminating your position. Your position is going to be no longer because since 3M got sold 3M, they got a regional manager. They don't need more than one leader. So I got laid off. And of course, a month later, the pandemic hits. I mean, trying to find work in the same level that you weren't there. But the thing is, I still got friends. I talked to some people high up, some friends, and they go, Eric, I got to tell you the truth. I'll tell you the real reason why you were let go from your job. They found out that you had a channel. And I had a Gypsy Road channel, but I wasn't really using it. I was just using it to go to other people's channels. I had another channel called Mr. True Thoughts. And it's about me speaking the truth about whatever. What doesn't matter. Of course, that channel got taken down. Gypsy Road kind of rise from the ashes. But he goes, they weren't afraid about you talking about Bigfoot, but they're afraid that since you're doing a channel, that you're not afraid to talk about things. You'll speak out in the open because you're doing it. And they didn't want that as a leader in their company. He said, that's the reason why they let you go. So when you put yourself on air, you're taking a chance. I mean, you're taking a chance. You could probably say I lost money. I have lost positions because of talking about the Bigfoot, UFOs, the Mandela effects in the world and all that. So when you come on board, you are taking a lot of chances. Jeff, you were on Mongolian Monsters show like 3-4 weeks ago. You're talking about when you're running your company, you couldn't come out and talk about the Bigfoot. I mean, am I crazy to say that if you're going to do this, you're going to have to accept the consequences that might come with it? You know, when I see Connor talking, I mean, I admire young people because they are truly taking a chance. Not everybody can make money off YouTube. Not everybody. There's only a small percentage of people that can actually make a living. But this can't affect your future earnings. Connor knows this. I had an interview, 7 interviews with one company. 7. They all wanted me. All of a sudden, I got an email saying, sorry, you're not going to be accepted. Why? How? What happened? And I know is because they found out that I'm doing a show. So doing a show can affect your future. But why I do it? Because I love it. I feel like I need to. I don't know why. I feel like this is my place. But Jeff, am I crazy to think that?
I think it's pretty normal. I mean, every human, when it comes down to making important decisions, I mean, whether they realize they're doing it or not, they're always assessing the risk versus the reward in any scenario. And you've got to ask yourself, what's the reward about being forthcoming about anything like that, right? Because there's always risk. I mean, I don't care what you decide to walk across the street to the grocery store, there's risk, right? What's the reward? Do you really need something at the store today or not? And so somebody who's carrying around a burden of having an encounter with a Bigfoot or hearing their grandmother speak to them who passed away a decade ago in their house every day or every night or something like that. I mean, when they feel like I really need to tell somebody about this, right? I need to talk to somebody to feel like, because a lot of times they'll say, I'm capable of dealing with this. I don't have a problem with processing this in my mind. But that now you've placed yourself in a very small psychological arena, so to speak, to compete with yourself for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And the ability to bring other people into that space, it makes it to where you feel like I'm not, you know, the rules that are out there for the game, so to speak. I can change them if I want to. I can talk to people. They can tell me about similar experiences. And sure, the risk of doing that is that people aren't going to believe you. People are going to be suspect of you. Somebody who deems you as a liar on one thing will now question everything you've ever said to them. And that gets to where people don't really responsibly draw a line and say, I don't know if what he's telling me is on the up and up or not, but it doesn't matter. I still look at him as a good person. I appreciate being around them. It's profitable to do business with him. Whatever these decisions are that they associate with you, is hearing my story and either believing or not believing worth lighting all the rest on fire? You know, that doesn't make sense to me, but to a lot of people, they just can't deal with that. You know,
yeah,
very close-minded is the issue.
Look what Daily Dan wrote. I lost a couple of jobs because of investigating Bigfoot sightings on my lunch break back in the day. So what I'm saying is, does happen.
Well, and this is the way when you say, well, should people sit on it or not? You know, when I had my encounter, I was 18 years old, and it was right on the doorstep of me turning a chapter in my life. I'd just gotten out of high school and I was going into the military. And I didn't know how long I'd be in the military. I joined the military for 3 years, ended up being in for 6. But, you know, when this thing happened, I had already joined the military. There was no getting out of it, right?
No.
So
once you're
right away, I know for 6 years now, or for 3 years at least, I can't tell anybody. They'll think I'm crazy, and I'm my MOS. I mean, I was stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, with the 29th Infantry Regiment, but I was also assigned to Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. Now, the work that I would be doing at Redstone Arsenal was classified work. The Redstone Arsenal is the most spied on military installation in the continental U.S. I mean, it is in Huntsville, Alabama. There's a hillside that on whether, and this is public, so I'm not going to tell you, first of all, anything that people can't know.
Yeah.
But you go into the side of this hill and you drive down a tunnel, and there are levels upon levels the size of football fields of, it almost looks like concrete hangars, levels of them, where they work on every classified weapon system, whatever the military is designing. That's where it takes fruition. Okay. And at the time, the stealth fighter, the stealth bomber, these were brand new, drawn on paper aircraft, to where weapons guidance systems and things like this, they were trying to develop those there. And my first day on base, I had to go through a whole class on, when you go to the mall, you don't talk to people. When you go to an amusement park, you don't talk to people, because these foreign spies that are in this area trying to gain this knowledge, they just find a young kid who just joined the army, and they'll come up and befriend you and talk to you. And pretty soon you're telling them whatever they want to know. And so, I mean, in order to get that type of security clearance, you can't tell them, oh, by the way, I had a 10-foot tall Bigfoot throw a log at me. They won't give it to you. I guarantee you they won't give it to you. So that was my reason for not saying anything until I got out of the military. When I got out of the military, went to college, didn't really ever meet anybody in college that I felt comfortable sharing this with. And by that time, I'd gotten used to not telling anybody, just saying, hey, look, I'm going to move on from this. And at some point in my life, I'll have an opportunity to really approach it and maybe examine that day and look at, maybe do some research or associate with somebody who does research to try to answer questions I have about it. Right. And to that day, I mean, so basically what happened was I was married. Once I got out of college, I was married. I ended up getting a real estate license. After a few years, I owned my own firm. After a few more years, I owned 3 firms in 3 different markets. And I was taking the money that I was making, shoveling it back into real estate investing. So now I've got partners that I had. One partner that I went to high school with. We were friends in high school. This guy went in the military too. And when he got out, he bought a Verizon phone store. And after 6 months, and this was like in the early 90s, cell phones were just taking off, right?
Yeah.
He took the profit he made and bought 3 more. Took the profit he made from that after a year and bought 10 more. Built it up to 292 Verizon stores all over the U.S. and sold them all for $500 million. Now, that's my business partner, and we're friends. So when we say, hey, should we buy this 300 acres and develop it, build homes, this and that, I handle the real estate side. He handles the development side. But do you think if I come out and tell him, hey, I don't know if you're aware of this, but when we graduated from high school, I went to Canada on a trip and had a Bigfoot attack me. Now, he trusts everything that I say as to be golden truth. That's why he deals with me with large amounts of money. Do you think he'd do that if he didn't believe something like that? I mean, maybe he would. I'd like to think he would, but that's too much of a risk, because if I get rid of him in my life, what do I got with that? I mean, it's profitable. There's a lot of people whose jobs depend on that because they work for him and his company. And it's just, the reward never outweighed the risk. I got married, and after 19 years of marriage, finally told my wife about what happened to me in Canada that day. And I thought, and I didn't, people say, how could you be married to somebody? You're supposed to share everything with this person, right? Why wouldn't you tell her? Literally, I was afraid she'd think I was losing my mind and she'd divorce me.
That's a fact. That's true. Yeah.
When I told her, she said, well, yeah, they exist. And I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, I've known that Bigfoot's real. I believe and I was like, well, fuck, I wish I would have told you a long time ago. I mean, I'm sitting here for 19 years feeling like my best friend I can't say this to, right? I'm the son of a hunting and fishing guide. I grew up in the outdoors. When I was 13 years old, I remember, going elk hunting out in the middle of Montana and stuff with my dad in the deep wilderness, right? My dad passed away 2 years ago. I never said one word about my encounter to him because I didn't think he'd believe me. And this is a man who lives in the outdoors for most of his life. So, our clients are guys that own casinos in Vegas, and they come here for opening weekend of pheasant hunting, and we guide them for like $6,000 a day. They're paying just to be here, right? You think if I tell them, guys, yeah, I had an experience with Bigfoot, what if 18 of those guys who come as a big group say next year, we're not going to that guy?
Yeah.
I mean, there was no reward that could outweigh the risk. Then I turned 50 years old and I've made enough money in real estate. I really didn't give a shit anymore. So Doug Hychek lives in Minnesota with me. I was talking to Doug and I told him my encounter story, and he says, dude, this is freaking unbelievable. I mean, we sat there for 2 hours talking about this. And he said, I have heard 1,000 people personally share encounter stories. He says, I've only heard 3 of them where they were physically attacked that I believe. There's other people that will say that. But anyways, he says, you've got to share this with people. You've got to get involved with the research. You've got the background where you can do the research. You can afford the equipment that you need to do the research. Why don't you get involved in this? And I just started thinking to myself, well, what if people don't want to associate with me? What if you lose friends? He says, who gives a shit, Jeff? Who gives a shit? Because here's the deal. You look at it as a niche to operate in. There's believers and there's non-believers, right? And there's a lot of people in the middle who aren't closed-minded enough to think that it isn't possible, right? I mean, I'm not going to say he's a liar. I don't know if I believe him, but he's not a liar. So really, you didn't have anything to lose sharing it with those people because they don't know if it's true or not, right? But the people that are believers and that will listen to you and listen to you share your account, they're the ones who are going to say, hey, if I need to buy or sell a home, I'm going to use that guy. He's genuine to me, right? If 80% of the people say, screw him, I'm not going to work with him, but 20% say, man, I believe that guy, I'm connected to that guy, then that's the 20% niche that I operate in, right? That's what I operated. That's where I would go after. So, and you're going to have people outside that niche who come in that aren't aware you were on YouTube talking about this or that. About 4 days ago, I had a mega church way across the country from where I live contact me. Somebody giving them my name as a person who was connected to get what they wanted to get done. They want to buy a former Mormon sect compound where the guy had 80 some wives, and it's a $7 million property, 200 acres, where the government seized it, threw everybody in prison because he was sex trafficking, and they forced it up for sale. And now this church wants to buy it to use as a retreat for women who have been sex trafficked, right? I mean, there's 80 some bedrooms and 7 different huge buildings on this property out in the wilderness. I mean, it's really remote and it's secure and it works for what they want to do. And they're like, hey, will you use us as our real estate broker to get this done? Well, that's $100,000 transaction from probably $150,000. If it closes, I get a good commission off of that. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm obviously the first thing I ask is I think they must not have seen my videos where I'm saying I was attacked by a Bigfoot, because would this giant Christian church come to me and say, hey, they might, but they might not. So it's not something that I would have disclosed to them on the front end of them deciding to use me. But, it's a gamble that I took. The freedom of being able to share my experience and help others feel comfortable to share theirs far outweighs anything I might lose in life for doing so. And you've got to get to that point in your life.
Yeah.
and realize that it's not some remote island where you're the only one on it. That's not what it is.
So, Connor, now you're younger than both of us. Now I call you, you know, you're the future, you're the young guns. You're coming up. Now you're hearing this stuff. I mean, honestly, do you feel yourself that you're taking a chance of any future earnings? I know it affected me. It's already, you know, I accepted it. But what do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I definitely know very well that it affects future jobs, relationships with my family members, and just how people view me online. Even in the paranormal world and cryptid community, I'm too much for a lot of people. So, yeah, I'm very well aware. And I've had things happen that people walked out of my life because of, you know, my beliefs, and that I believe in Sasquatch, and not all the establishments forced, you know, things upon us. But yeah, man, I definitely have witnessed it with my family members too. Them turn their backs on me and still think it's a myth and that I'm just chasing fairies out in the woods. And it doesn't matter how many interviews I do or how many books I write and read, I will never get through to some people. And I'm very well aware of that. But I've also kind of gave up on society and that big future long career, because I think it's all kind of an illusion and a placebo. And now it's unfolding that, you know, nobody's jobs are secure. Nobody is living that life that we once thought we were. So I think the pandemic and everything that has happened over the past few years has kind of just strengthened my beliefs and my force and my push towards this strangeness. And I understand that I might be living in a trailer or in my car or in a cardboard box. And I hear your guys' you know, admirable things that you guys have done in your life. And I've done some good things, but I just never see myself reaching that level of success in the real world. And that's something I've came to terms with. And hopefully I find success in my own path. And I believe this world is big enough for everybody to find their own happiness and joy and people that they need to align with. So I'm just going to keep being me, and hopefully the right things happen. But I have came to terms with I'm going to be on the outside of a lot of rooms. I'm going to have hard nights ahead of me, but I believe that I'm going to meet the right people that everything will fall into place. But that's a hard walk to walk.
Yeah.
And one of the things you need to understand too, Connor, is that, you know, we don't measure success by money. Too many people do that. The most miserable people I know in this world have plenty of money. That's not what we measure success by if we're looking at what we find joy in. Well, I don't find joy in, I mean, I thought, man, it'd be great to have a business model that was profitable, right? But if I had that, but I didn't have a relationship with my kids because of it, or I didn't have close friends because of it, because I just vested too much in that, at that point, there's a lot of lonely people with a lot of money who would honestly give you 90% of what they have in the bank if they could just have one person who they felt connected to, because they don't.
Right.
And when you look at what you're doing, regardless of what you benefit from it in your life, if you find joy in doing it, and two, along the way, you've bridged all these people in helping them build relationships with other like-minded people, and you look at the benefit that it's brought to those people, you've accomplished more in your life than I have signing deeds from one building to another person. I mean, what meaningful impact did that really make? You know what I mean?
I definitely appreciate that. And I admire you, Jeff, because you are you. And we've had, you know, after midnight conversations for 180 minutes, you know, that just kept going, and it could have went all the way till morning. But then I found out you are, you know, very successful in your other life. And you know me, I love you because you're you. All that after outer world success, you know, that is very impressive. But you, Jeff Harding, your personality, you're the one that always comes up with something and not scared to say something. And that's why I appreciate you. And that's why I feel like we've even met and crossed paths and along the Gypsy Road. But yes, man, I definitely I definitely feel that way, but hearing it reinforced, definitely makes me feel better, because I put a lot of importance into meeting a lot of people and being my natural self so they can be inspired to be their natural self. And that has, glued a few people together and strung that red yarn, to more spider webs. But yes, I definitely appreciate that. And that's what I pride myself.
There's a principle of isolation versus bond that I read about. I did some reading about it in kind of the psychology background part of going to college. I never put a lot of stock in it, but I've circled back and looked at the isolation versus bond principles will really show you that, let's say, like, for a lot of new people who are in my industry in realty, they're afraid to talk on their Facebook about political things, right? Let's say, I don't want people to know I'm a conservative, because if they're a liberal with a house to sell, they won't want to use me as a realtor. So I don't talk about anything that has to do with that. That what they don't realize is they might isolate some of the market if they talk about it, but they're building a bond with the rest of the market. So they've got half the market finding less value in them than average. Okay. Had they known nothing about them, that would have been average, right? So now they have a reason not to like them, right? But the other half has built value in them because they found something they bond with. They're not isolated from them, right? And you're better off getting rid of the half that don't see the value and focusing on the half that see you more than average, right? And so when you look at that and say, well, if I come out and share my accounts or share my experiences and I'm going to lose people out of stuff, there's people that you're going to build bonds with and are going to see value in you for it. And you will find more joy and be more successful with those people in your life than you would have not saying anything and everybody seeing you as a 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Nobody ever would have saw you more than a 5, more than that. So we make decisions that have risk versus reward, but because there is a reward there is a bond factor with other human beings, right? And even though there's an isolation factor at the same time, you're slimming down the amount of people you can interact with, whether it's in business or friendships or whatever. But the ones that are left are more meaningful and more buildable when it comes to those relationships. So that's what people should really focus on. Yeah, you're going to lose things in your life, and life's about loss. Tell me what part of life doesn't include loss. We weren't guaranteed not to lose stuff.
You're 100% correct. I say life is hard. Living life is a challenge. I love everything you guys are saying. And when you look at the public, no offense, the public always looks at people who talk about this kind of stuff. We're all hippies, we all just play acoustic guitars around a fire. And then when you get certain people like, Jeff's a businessman. People look at me like, oh, Eric must have, he must be this low guy. I was a technical operations manager for major cable companies running fiber to towers and stuff. And there's a lot of people that are important in the world that when they do come out and speak, it is important because this image of playing acoustic guitars around a fire is just not true. There's people that have experiences their whole life, and you're right, Jeff, and you do got to pick the time to finally come out and talk about it. When you're younger, you do worry a lot about what other people think of you. And then a lot of times when you get older, you're like you're saying, oh, fuck what people think. I got my friends. Chocolate and Cheese earlier in the chat and wrote, when you come out and start speaking what you feel that's true, you're going to learn who your true friends are. So,
yeah, and the truth is you might lose some people who were true friends who just, it was a deal breaker for them, but you don't have any control over that. Their personality, what they see value in, I don't have any control over that. Anything that I've achieved in business was due to a creative mindset who refused to do something normally inside of the box. And that's no different than Connor's mindset or your mindset or anybody in chat. We're here because we have the capability or the ability to get outside of that box and be open-minded enough to creatively entertain ideas that most people wouldn't, let's say. And so what happens with that is if there's 800 people who are realtors in the market that I'm in, and there's 15,000 transactions a year, the top 10% of realtors do about 80% of the business. Most of the people hardly do any. And it's because they operate in this world of I'm afraid to really create an identity for myself, right? And for me, I don't know what the average number of transactions are, but I don't want to be average. And if I don't want to be average, that means I can't stay in the box and keep doing the same things everybody else is doing. And every educational institution, every training institution has always trained us to follow the rules, stay inside the box, and you can be as successful as that person or that person and that person. I don't give a shit how successful they are. I want to be happy and I'd like to be successful. So I'm going to get outside of the box and do the things that bring me joy and figure out a way to be successful at the same time. The only reason why I mention that is people who are apprehensive about sharing something, there are hard limitations that keep you from doing that. For instance, for me, it was I went into the military. Okay, I can't really do this there in that arena. Or you're married to somebody that you just feel is not going to understand this, right? And you are so vested in that relationship with them. Maybe you've got children with them now. And you're like, look, I just can't ruin this by risking it, right? But if you don't have those hard limitations, you need to be able to say, if my only reason for not doing it is my own personal apprehension, it just won't feel, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult to handle how people process it. If that's your reason, you're never going to make the decisions in life to get outside of that box anyways. You're probably not going to be happy about a lot of things in life. You need to be able to get that mindset to the point where I'm willing to be uncomfortable if in the end it means I can find more joy and build better relationships with people. You got to cross that threshold.
I love that,
because
man.
it's worth crossing it. It is.
It is. Listen, I've told Connor this. The days I do this show in the morning and then I go to work, I feel so much better that day. I did the show. We talked. We got things off our chest. Not get off our chest, but we're talking with friends. It makes your whole day better. My day is better when I do this show in the morning.
Subconsciously, we start feeling better and we find ourselves getting more creative. I'm going to share this with you because I think you'll get a kick out of it. Last night, okay, I go on a lot of different channels. People will ask me, will you come on my channel? Well, that's the reason why I don't have my own, is if people want to invite me on their channel to share a viewpoint or share an experience, I'm willing to do that. I don't need my own channel to do that, right? I've got plenty of friends like you and Connor that have channels that can do that. But a lot of times I'm stuck in the box of talking about Bigfoot research or sharing my encounter. Those are the two reasons why they want me on. I don't get on a lot of shows that operate in the paranormal outside of the Bigfoot world, right? And it's like subconsciously when I have that, I don't know what it is, but because I don't make this as a conscious decision, but my body somehow processes that, my mind processes that, sees it as an opportunity to like play on a bigger playground, so to speak. The night before I come on a show like this, I don't realize it's going to happen. I go to sleep and I'll have the craziest dreams. Like last night, I dreamt about, it was a crazy dream. Alice Cooper was in this dream. I mean, it's like,
I love it.
Alice Cooper came up to me and gave me a list of songs, and we're at like a bar that had live bands playing, and he gives me this list of songs. He says, I need you to sing these songs. And I'm like, you're Alice Cooper. He goes, yeah, look at the list. And I'm looking at the list going, these are all your songs. And he goes, yeah, I want to hear you sing them. And so I went up and sang them. And afterwards he says, okay, come to the hotel. We're having a party. And as we're at the hotel and we're smoking it up. And he says, listen, I want you, I'm going to retire. I want you to be the new front man in the band. And I said, in the band Alice Cooper? And he said, yeah. And I said, what's the band going to be called? He says, it's going to be called Alice Cooper. I said, but I'm not Alice Cooper. And he goes, yeah. I said, well, you're going to quit the band and you want me to lead the band, but you still want to call it Alice Cooper. He says, yeah. And I said, that doesn't make sense to me. And we sat there and argued about this. And I woke up going, what the hell is going on here? I mean, I only have dreams like that when my body subconsciously sees an opportunity to go on a paranormal, like it's just a chance to speak to people or be with people who see things way more openly than I normally am surrounded by in real life. Therefore, that dreamscape all of a sudden opens up too. Isn't that so weird?
I love it. It's a sign, dude. You know, Alice Cooper helps kids. He has foundation to help kids learn music and stuff. I appreciate Alice Cooper. He's not this devil dancing guy you think he is. He's a religion person. Oh, yeah. He helps kids. And there's more to Alice Cooper. So maybe that dream tells you something. And Jeff, the reason I wanted you on here, like I said, it's easy to go on any channel and talk about Bigfoot. That's easy. But sometimes, you know, I want to talk a little bit deeper, and you're not afraid to. You're not afraid to. Everybody heard my story before. I don't want to keep talking about my story. So that's why I wanted you on here, and I appreciate it so much.
A lot of times when somebody invites me on, they want to talk about the research or they want to talk about my encounter. They want the nuts and bolts of it, right? They're like, hey, tell us the facts. They don't want to know the feelings. They don't want to know the opinions. They just want to know tell us about what happened, or tell us about what you're seeing in your research. Or there is no, hey, how do you feel about this?
No, it's like the military. The military don't want to admit that you develop a PTSD. They want to hide all the facts, you know. Mm-hmm. Your encounter has created a PTSD for you, you know, and then it has been affected you your whole life. And what I'm hearing from you is because of now you're talking about it. You're expressing yourself. In a lot of ways, it's a self-medicated thing you're doing to yourself. You're helping yourself by talking about it.
Well, and I didn't realize that was going to be the case. I got to a point where I knew that I had found an area in northern Minnesota that I wanted to spend some time in and try to answer questions that I had from my encounter. So talking to Doug Hychek, who lives in Minnesota and is a researcher and works with hundreds of researchers, I started sharing some ideas that I had, and that my ideas were based on things that don't work. I wanted to eliminate things that aren't working in research and focus on things that maybe haven't been tried or things that people have discounted, and start with a blank slate and build up an experience rather than start with, okay, this is what everybody's doing. Let's start doing that. Well, we aren't advancing anything if we're all going to do the same things, you know. Yeah. We're not going to advance the science that way. So I carved out a plan to put around a prolonged project that lasted almost 7 months now. And the goal of it was to, you know, see if we could accomplish something different than everybody was accomplishing. And I just approached it with the want to do that. Seeing how it's benefited other people and seeing how people have learned from stuff, that really wasn't on my radar for a motive to do it. It's just I've realized that along the way. And that's when I first started talking about it. I think that's what people said, hey, look, let's get this guy on a show, because he's not only doing something dynamically different than most researchers, but if somebody shares with me an idea, I've got to be able to look at that and say, as absurd as it sounds, I don't think anybody's tried that yet. You know, I've got to find value in these things that maybe people haven't had the resources or the time or enough motive to try them themselves, but they tend to tell you about it if you put yourself out there in front of them. And that's why I started kind of being a guest on some of these shows, because I get messages. I get 3 or 4 messages a week now on Facebook Messenger from people in the northern Minnesota area who have had encounters, and they ask me, will you come look at this or look at that? And I just, you know, I'm not really an investigator, but I can put them in touch with the people that could explore that. But what I liked about it is that I started drawing these clusters of where these things are happening. And I've now identified a new area that I'll throw this out there because I haven't told anybody in this community yet. And Connor will like this, but next year in either June or August, I don't really want to do it in July, but June or August, I'm going to set aside about 4 or 5 days where I have a cluster of very recent encounters in a very remote area on the boundary waters between Minnesota and Canada, in a remote area that I'd like to get some kayaks and canoes, and I would get all of those. And anybody who, I don't want to get 50 people, right? We're not trying to do a 168 type thing here. I'm talking about getting between 5 and 8 or 10 people who really, if they could travel here and be here in that time frame, I'll, bring your tents or whatever, but I'll have the canoes, kayaks, whatever we decide to use to get up this river to this area. It is so remote. I'll get the technology to make it work. I think Doug Hychek would probably want to come with, or for sure his son Blaine probably would.
Island Bigfoot says I'll go.
Yeah, I just think that, it'd be a cool opportunity to go, because this, in my mind, this is a high probability area. This is something where I don't want to bring 30 people in and have a big whooping party out of it, around the campfire every night. I think that may dwindle your odds. But if we could go in and put, 9 people, put 3 of them in 3 different areas that are all within, a quarter mile of each other, but we're not all on top of each other. We can interact each day, but really focus on maybe 3 different areas of research. One doing droning, one doing similar stuff to what I'm doing now in research, and one looking just for outside evidence like tree structures and things like that. Boy, I think that would be a fun outing to really document and just experience, because there's so many people in this community, and Mogs, Pat Turner, people who are in the Bigfoot community that have channels that say, man, I would give anything to see one, right? Brent Dill. I mean, you look at where he's at and all the people that he's interviewed, and you think, man, this guy should have had a couple of encounters by now, and he hasn't. But this might be an opportunity where I don't know how many times people put themselves in a place like this to create an opportunity. And so to me, that's something that would be fun, because I can only do so much research as one person, but with a team of 9 or 10 people, boy, that would be a fun area if it was really remote and it was, you can't drive there. We've got a kayak or paddle there. Okay.
Wow.
And it's 20 miles of kayaking and paddling to get there from the nearest access area. So you very few people probably been this remote, right? But yet you don't have to take a float plane in northern Canada to do this. This is in Minnesota. So.
Oh, that sounds exciting. I get what you're saying, because if you have too many people, what I've learned from all these channels and these investigations, these Bigfoots, they're intelligent.
Yeah.
And they can smell you. They know you. More people you have, they know you, and they're going to stay away.
Well, they have a curiosity factor. That's their weakest link. In my mind, my whole research was built around that their weakest link is the weakest chink in their armor is their curiosity. And that's the one thing you can leverage and exploit. Too. And with a large amount of people, you may leverage that, but not for a prolonged period of time, not over 3 days. Okay. So, when you get 50 people out in the woods, that is an opportunity for fellowship and to build relationships amongst each other and share ideas with each other. From a research standpoint, I don't know what your chances are of discovering something outside of tree structures or prints that maybe were left prior to you getting there. I don't know if anybody's going to say a Bigfoot's going to walk into a campground of 50 people and say, here I am, take my picture. Probably ain't going to happen, right? I think you got a lot better opportunity to do that with a controlled number of people. I wouldn't even put 10 people in the same area. That's why I'd split them into 3 different areas, 3 different teams, focus on 3 different goals, and try to work together, but not all be around the same fire every night with a big group. That may be perceived as intimidating, you know?
Yeah. Well, any investigation, paranormal, anything, everybody would tell you who've been on investigations that you're not guaranteed.
Well, no, but even if you're trying to make contact with a ghost in a haunted area, your opportunity to bring 2 or 3 people in and have an interaction versus bringing 30 people and have an interaction is way more. And here's the reason, and it's for the same reasons in the Bigfoot community. You're trying to establish a bond, whether it's a curiosity or a need. Okay, I think from a paranormal, a ghost standpoint or a spirit standpoint, your target maybe has a need to communicate, right? That maybe they're trapped or they have a need to communicate. So they want to communicate with you maybe as bad as you do with them, right? Which isn't the case in the Bigfoot world. But you going in there with 2 or 3 people, that other side, you have a lot less chance of them seeing a negative reason in that group of people not to communicate if you only have 2 or 3 people. It's the same perception in Bigfoot. A Bigfoot or a group of Bigfoot, a family of them, 5, 6 individuals, they see 2 or 3 people there. They might choose to try to curiously interact with them. They see 30 people there. That's just too much. There's a chance that 3 or 4 of them are louder than all the rest, or there's a negative vibe there that they just say, can't do this, know?
Yeah.
So,
and I agree with what you're saying earlier that, you do got to try different things. I mean, think about it. Say you go back to the same forest over and over again, doing the exact same thing. They know what you're doing over and over again.
Yeah.
If you're really trying to spot, you're going to have to think outside the box what they're not thinking that you're already going to do, because people are, like you said, people get used to do a certain way and they can't change. I don't know why, but what you're saying is think outside the box because they know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So Connor,
you've just got this deal where you need to be open-minded enough to not subscribe to, just because you subscribe to a theory that you seem to have results with in your area, that does not mean that's duplicatable everywhere, because there may be a reason why it's working in your area, or it may be one that you could duplicate in another area. But this assumption that because I did it and it worked, everybody should do this everywhere they're at, you've got to be able to look at that and say, why did it work where I'm at? Is there a reason that would be geographically specific to it working where I was at? Things like that.
Yeah. When we had our encounter when I was a kid, we were just hunting on hunting trip. We weren't looking for Bigfoot. And we encountered that we think it's Bigfoot. I can't tell you 100% proof. But, and then when we actually went out and looked for him, we never saw him. You just don't know. You could be doing something totally different. We had a lot of people on this channel who've been on paranormal investigations who actually ran into sounds and kind of a vision. Oh, they thought there was Bigfoot. They weren't even there for Bigfoot. They were there for a paranormal investigation in the woods, and they think they ran into a Bigfoot. You just don't know.
Yeah.
Connor, you go on so many different kind of investigations. Have you ever been on a paranormal investigation and you actually felt like you ran into a Bigfoot?
Oh, yeah. Well, once you were just saying that, I kind of laughed. You were like, yeah, people investigate in the woods. It's like, okay, in the woods, Bigfoot. You have the possibility of the hairy man once you enter the woods. So I'm just trying to spread awareness of that realm. But yes, some people are so far into it thinking you got to be miles into another realm, into the deep mountains or a cave to experience strange things. No, these things are very curious, like Jeff was saying, and that is their one chink. That's their one chance we have to expose them or to be able to work with that bridge. But also, like Jeff was saying, a need. There has been so many connections that I've heard out there that people have, fed them and created a little rapport, but then they get used to that. And it works in positive and negative ways because they'll just keep showing up, but sometimes they'll be negative and get violent if they don't get what they want. But you have to spread your wings in this world and open your eyes, because just even the missing 401 cases, and those are documented and those are real people. Those talk about glowing lights in the sky, things that are not possible in this realm, folded clothes in the middle of rivers. There have been stories of lost time, even years. People have woken up years after going on a hike. So we just have to really open our eyes to the possibilities, because once we start building walls and closing ourselves off, we're going to be isolating a lot. And in a different way, Jeff, when you were talking about isolating those wrong people and fighting for the people that actually see your light, that 1,000,000% spoke to me, because I speak for those that feel me and those who are interested, and those who can't understand, they will never understand. And they are fine existing where they exist. But if we're talking this paranormal and Bigfoot world, we have to keep doing what the Gypsy Road is doing and combining them all and just researching it all on a 360 spin, because that's the only way you're not going to be able to catch anything. If you're looking for a physical being only for a Sasquatch and not these strange structures and the ancient language and energy manipulation and EMF and RF and other things, you have to explore outside the realm. That's why it is important what Jeff's doing. That's important what I'm doing.
Well,
Nana Boss, she's commenting down below, her son was recording the whole time, and every chuck, every strange noise, you get that zip on the app, and you can just tap into it. So every paranormal investigation is a Sasquatch investigation, and every time I'm in the woods, it's something else. So I just open my eyes very wide.
I can tell you that, like on Doug Highcheck's 9 live cams that he has up, and he shares footage with every time he gets something that's confusing, or boy, what do you think this is? Because not everything's we have more definitive videos that are captured there than there are of definitive videos that make you realize what something is. So he'll say, well, what do you think this is? What do you make of this? And he'll share them with me. And, we have more pictures of orbs than we do of anything, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people, and people have heard me say this several times. I believe orbs are a phenomena that is real. I believe Bigfoot is a phenomena that is real. Until I see Bigfoot fart out an orb somewhere at the same time, I don't know how they're connected, right? But that doesn't mean that because I haven't seen orbs associated with Bigfoot, that doesn't mean they couldn't be. So I have to be open-minded to that, right? So I acknowledge that spirits are real, negative energy is real. There's a lot of unexplained stuff that if I don't have the answers to, I have to admit that phenomena exists, right? It could be very, very real. I have nothing in my life experience or research or anything that defines it as not real, okay? Now, so when we start talking about Bigfoot and what could be correlated with it, whether there is an extraterrestrial connection, whether there is an interdimensional connection, whether there is a spiritual connection, whether there's a supernatural connection, I don't know. I can tell you what my opinions are. And I think that if you lived in the woods 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for decades, and that's all you did, your survival depended on your elusiveness. I mean, 100%, right?
I agree with you 100%.
Your ability to be, even if you're 10 foot tall and 1,200 pounds, your ability to go from A to B without making noise, you get really freaking good at that. You get really good at that. That does not mean because it got from here to here and I didn't hear it and I didn't see it, does not mean that it somehow transported itself there in a supernatural way. But I don't have any research evidence that shows it can't.
Exactly.
Boom. Now, there's a lot of people say, I believe it's flesh and blood and it can't do that. Well, you believe it's flesh and blood based on all these perceptions that you've drawn in your lifetime, but you're discounting something with any lack of perception on it.
Well, Jeff, you're absolutely right. You should be open-minded. You don't have to believe everything that you hear. You don't have to believe every picture that you see. I've said 90% of orb pictures are fake, but the 10% are the ones you want to look at. 2 weeks ago, Bigfoot, Anon, and myself, we interviewed a guy named Brinks who does investigations of the Japan Bigfoot in Japan. And he's doing his own investigations. Like Connor was talking about the missing 411. He was talking about how he was looking at all the missing people in Japan and where the major areas were. And funny thing, on his map that he showed, that the areas that people are missing are the areas that have the biggest Bigfoot paranormal sightings. That's great investigation. Now, are they all related? Maybe not, but it makes you think like, hey, there might be a relation to this, and we should be open-minded. Now, we talked about how the public looks at us, talking about this stuff. But within communities, as soon as you talk about paranormal and Bigfoot together or UFOs, people look at you like you're fucking crazy. They don't belong together, and I don't understand. If you're going to believe in one, why can't you at least be open-minded to other possibilities? I'm not saying paranormal has to be your real thing. But we have the Sea Squashers on here. Jeff, you've been on their show. They talked about how they have seen some orb colors around Bigfoot.
Yeah.
There has been conversations about that.
Well, there's been so many sightings that have had even, not even if you want to define them as orbs, but a sparkling
color light.
Yeah. And, here's the thing. When I see orb videos, you look at it and say, well, is it real or is it fake? A lot of times it's neither. I mean, a dust particle floating in the air with a reflection coming off of it, that reflection will look perfectly round, very fluid, almost plasmic. It floats and moves effortlessly, seems to have its own energy because of the way it changes direction as it moves. It could simply be a particle of dust reflecting something. But that doesn't mean it's fake. I mean, it's just a natural occurrence. But here's the thing. If we're going to tack stuff up to natural occurrence, where do you define that? What are the parameters you put around that classification? Yeah. Natural occurrence can involve something very supernatural. Very supernatural. And because we don't have all the answers of what are the elements that input into our area that we're trying to develop a research decision on or an opinion on, I don't understand all of the energies that exist around us. I mean, I was just talking in a chat with Steve Stockton the other night about how as physical beings, we walk on this earth and we are completely oblivious to the fight between good and evil that exists around us every day. You have no idea of what is occurring. The positive, whether you believe in angels, whether you believe in guardian angels, whether you believe in just a positive spirit. And then you've got the negative side of that, the nemesis of that. And that is an ever ongoing battle in every area of the world, in every area of every town, in every area of every block of every town. It exists everywhere. And it's completely invisible to us if we don't open our minds that this is occurring. And we're just living our lives amongst it.
Yeah. Chalking
stuff up to happenstance or coincidence. People just don't get what is happening. How vain is it to believe that we are the only super intelligent individuals that are here, that the earth, that the universe revolves around? I mean, it just, yes. And I'm a Christian and say this from a Christian perspective. Some people look at the sky and say, hey, God created all this for us. And some people look at the sky and say, I'm a pretty small, you look at the vastness of what's out there, you feel pretty small. And the idea that it was all there just for me without somebody else the possibility of somebody being equally as smart or smarter that benefits equally as much as I do from the things that were created by a creator, if you believe in that deity. I don't get how you can rationalize that, you know?
Yeah.
Those are people who obviously in their life have never felt small. They never have, because they don't get that. I had a friend of mine who flew F-16s in the military, and it was during Desert Storm. And when they would get scrambled, fully loaded with weapons, and they would have to fly like 5 hours, full blast, full speed to a target that they're supposed to bomb. So right before they'd go in and do it, they'd climb to 30,000 feet and refuel off of a refuel tanker so that they didn't need all that fuel to get back. But in case they dropped their bombs, if they got in a dogfight or were pursued or had to deviate from what they plan on doing, they'd have the fuel to do it. They wouldn't put themselves in a bad situation. So they'd refuel, and then they'd go in and they'd drop their payload. And he says, when you're flying alone in an aircraft and you hit a button that releases a bomb and you look out the window and you're seeing explosions and stuff down on the ground, and then you have to fly in the pitch dark 5 hours back to an aircraft carrier. You want to talk about the smallest feeling in the world? Wondering what just happened due to your actions. Did we accomplish what we meant to? Were people killed or injured that we didn't mean to be? Did it actually hit the spot it was? He says, you feel this big at that point because of all of the weight that you carry on an action. And people who've never felt that small are incapable of opening up their eyes to, how will I be judged for this? Is there a reason that outweighs does the good outweigh the bad for what I just did? Things like that. People who can process that kind of stuff can look at situations like this and say, yeah, that could exist. Yeah, or that could be real. But people who've never felt that small or ever been in those life experiences, it's so easy to live narrow-mindedly and say, I got the whole fucking universe figured out, and this is why this happens, this is why that happens, and I'm just going to live my life through this narrow corridor.
Well said. I mean, well said. I mean, you make so many good points. I mean, I know this is a clip from a movie, but if you guys remember the movie War Games, in the first scene, they were testing the people if they could pull the key, press the button for a nuclear war, and half the people couldn't, like you're saying, because back in your mind, is this worth it? You know, how can I live with this? Am I going to kill innocent people? And you talk about the pressure. I can imagine being on a plane 5 hours back, and you're not even landing, not even talking to people. You're alone. You're cold. You're up in the air. That's just, yeah. I mean, what could go through your mind?
I was on an aircraft carrier once when we were extracted from an area over there, and just my whole platoon was there waiting to be picked up by helicopter. But first, all these jets had to land from this, and these guys, it was a group of Navy aviators called the Sundowners, and they had just went on a run like that. It lasted all night long, and they were coming back to land, and the aircraft carrier was pitching in 14-foot waves. The deck was. And so they're coming into the wind, trying to time this right. And if the deck wasn't pitching just right when they came in, they'd wave them off, and they'd have to come back around. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you only got so many shots at that before you're in a serious fuel issue, because if they wave you off, you're on full afterburner trying to get the speed and height to get back around again. And this one guy, it took 9 attempts for him to land on that carrier deck. And this is after a bombing run like that. When he landed it, he got out of his plane, and this guy looked like they pulled him out of the ocean. I mean, he was covered in everything, was wet from sweat, tears in his eyes, mental breakdown. And this is one of the, you know, this guy is a freaking machine when it comes to what he does. And you just realize the human element that goes into making decisions, right? So which brings us back to where the show started from. we make the decision. Do we choose to share something or not? And when's the right time to do it? Listen, this isn't your decision doesn't involve the survivability of other people. It's you. It's a personal decision, right? So we don't have to worry about, is somebody going to die if I don't make the right decision? This is for you. This is for you to live the rest of your life in a way that you feel I've unburdened myself, because it is a burden to carry something like this and never talk about it. If you've had an encounter with a Sasquatch, you've never told anybody, that is a huge burden, right? Not to have anybody to confide in, or at least somebody to say, I believe you. The human need to have somebody look at you and say, Connor, I believe you. If you never have somebody say that after an experience like that, that's a big deal. And when I share my encounter, for those in chat who have heard it, I talk about, there was 3 people there that day. There was myself, there was another friend of mine who was 18, and then there was his little brother who was just turned 14. And how he emotionally was traumatized during this whole encounter. And this wasn't something where we watched something walk across the road for 20 seconds and it's gone. This went on and on and on. And it was standing in front of us. And it was just like, there was no question on what am I seeing. I mean, it's right there for a long period of time. Probably the experience from when it started to where it ended was over 15 minutes. Okay. And he was losing, his little brother was losing his shit. I mean, he was coming undone psychologically throughout this experience. And I get how that happens. I've got 2 boys that are 17 years old. Okay. And where they're at now in their life, the young men, and where they were at 13, 14 years old, there's a lot of difference there. Okay. How they emotionally process stuff. And so I get how it affected him differently. But I'll tell you what, as a combat veteran who's been shot at, seen people shot, I've had people in my squad get killed. When I look at how it affected people who I operated with, very highly emotionally stressful situations, and the PTSD that they induce, for my friend's little brother that day, that was a PTSD inducing experience, what he went through for a prolonged period of time. The emotional wreck, he was broken. And I don't know if without being able to talk to somebody, I don't know how you ever get past that. Maybe he was able to, but I can tell you the benefits of being open and sharing it with people. Some won't believe you and some will. But the benefit that you get to experience by developing that acknowledgement that you're going to get from some people say, I believe you, is so emotionally needed and rewarding for you to be able to continue the rest of your life.
Oh, it is.
I don't care if you told 10 people and 9 of them said you're full of shit, because one of them validated you and you've built a relationship with that person now. You will benefit more than if all 10 of them would have stuck together and you never would have said anything.
Oh, it is. I'm not going to get into, because I have a military disability. Part of it is PTSD. I'm not going to say what the PTSD. I had to go to classes and or see medical people. They talk to you. And my best medicine is when I started doing these channels and start talking out in the open. That has helped me more than anything. Yes, have I lost financially because of it? Proof is in the pudding. I've lost financially doing this channel. I mean, it's a money loss. But spiritually, I'm a winner. It's made me feel more better living life. I don't, like you said, Jeff, you don't have to have all the money in the world. I don't need money to open up a screen and talk to you guys. I mean, yeah, you got to pay for the internet. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But talking to you guys have helped me live such a better life with less money.
It's because you're not living it invisible now. That's really the way you overcome PTSD. And here's the other thing. If we look at tragedies that happen around us, especially with young people in schools, when you have a kid who commits suicide and it affects the whole school, typically what you normally have is a whole school saying, is there anything I could have done to prevent this? Is there any type of way that I could have intervened in this, right? And that's why they have to bring in so many counselors for this, is because the amount of guilt that some people will feel because of that. Because most of the kids who reach that emotional point where they didn't want to live anymore is because they felt invisible. They didn't have the friends there. They didn't have people who said, I get you. I understand who you are. You matter to me. I see you, right? Or maybe they did have a friends group who all of a sudden projected their opinion of them publicly in front of other kids, that this person isn't worth looking at. This person isn't worth acknowledging. This person isn't worth seeing, right? And that just that emotional part is so devastating that they don't feel they can exist in that. When you feel invisible because you've had an experience that you say, I can't tell people because this might happen, you don't feel visible at that point. You don't feel acknowledged. You carry a burden inside of you that you feel is like making you invisible to people to some extent. And I guess unless you've been in that situation, that's hard to maybe grasp your mind around. But it's real.
Well, people who've been with my channel for a long time know that I had a brother who became a sister, and because how life treated him from switching, he's no longer here with us. He did some things that, I'm not going to get into it, but because people weren't listening, and he
felt invisible because people didn't understand how he felt, right?
That's what I'm saying.
It's the whole thing of feeling like somebody connects and understands you. Nobody's ever going to understand what you've been through if you never tell anybody. Nobody's going to connect to your experience if you choose not to tell anybody. And we might tell ourselves, well, I don't, like I did. I don't tell people because of my job or this or that. The truth is, it's not the reasons why you shouldn't tell somebody. It's the reasons why you should.
Exactly.
Because the reasons why you should will always outweigh the reasons why you shouldn't, whether we would choose to acknowledge it or not.
And you have to have thick skin, because you're going to have people that are going to bash you.
Absolutely.
You have to.
But you'll have that in any area of your life.
Area, yes.
If you bowl on a bowling team, there's a risk you'll go out there and have a horrible night and bomb, and you got 3 other people on your team that think you're the biggest asshole because you couldn't bowl well one night. That exists everywhere. You're going to let people down in life. It's part of living.
Yep. What I'm going to do is I got to wind down now. I got to get ready to go to work. But always, before I always end the show, I always let every guest, every person have a last thing they want to say. Anything they want to say. A show's coming up, a book, anything that's happening in the next 3-4 days. This is your chance to tell everybody. So we'll start with Jeff. Jeff, is there anything? Actually, Jeff, you're the main guest. I'll have you go last.
Okay.
Connor, anything you want to say that's coming up?
Yes, I have a live tomorrow for Thanksgiving. It is like 2.5 hours long. It's from the weekend expedition at Stacy Brown's MyACA investigation. It was awesome. Nana Boss, she's watching right now. Her and her son actually found a hair sample that they're sending to Jeff. So I love when worlds collide and everything connects. And real quick about the Alice Cooper, there was a Cooperstown bar in Cleveland, and that was one of the strangest, funnest places that I used to go to after Cleveland Indians games. So it all connects, man. And Alice Cooper is very intelligent and then gets shamed as this wild man. So I think we can all kind of learn something from his lesson. Of course, guys, check out my books. These copies are going to be limited edition here soon, because Beyond the Fray Publishing is going to be putting them all out again with fancy book covers and just a little bit more editing in the process. Of course, check out Zillafoot. It's at Walmart. The Void Cat trailer is on YouTube. I love chopping up with these guys. Love everybody in the chat. Bully the bullies, but of course, try to spread wellness. And also try to just raise awareness, because there are people going missing, but there is mysterious things happening. But we could find the balance of positivity and just enlightenment. And that's what I'm about. But
awesome.
Jeff, what are you up to, man? I'm very excited.
Well,
And
all I
count
wanna
me
say
in for
is,
the Minnesota trip
the only
next
thing I'm
summer.
disappointed with the Alice Cooper thing. Alice Cooper's on tour with Ace Frehley, and that's going to be a kick-ass fucking tour. The only thing I'm disappointed about that tour is Ace Frehley is doing mostly all Kiss songs, and Ace Frehley has some kick-ass solo songs, Rock Soldiers, Into the Night, and I don't understand why he's not singing none of his solo songs on the Alice Cooper tour. I know he says because everybody going to Alice Cooper expects Kiss songs, not his solo. Ace Frehley, if you're watching me, I know you're not, but if you are, your solo songs are fucking awesome. Sing Rock Soldiers. Those songs are freaking awesome, Ace. But I'm sorry about that. Jeff, you got the last saying.
Well, so I get questions every week of people, especially in chats. People are like, how's your research coming? What's going on with it? I've landed the plane. The whole prolonged thing, it's done now. And we completed it, and the complete results of it, some of that will be used, is likely to be used in Justin and Doug's upcoming production, Legend Meets Science 2, which would probably not be out till mid to end next year because of the amount of DNA testing and things that are going to happen in that. The ultimate betrayal part of that with all the cameras and stuff, it was a very interesting, I'll just say it was a very interesting ending. Some of it I can't talk about yet.
Understand.
It wasn't an ending that it's like a multiple choice question where you think there's two answers, and there was a third that I was unaware of. So it wasn't A, it worked, B, it didn't work, or C, something else happened. Something happened that was, when we eventually share it with people, they're going to be kind of blown away by it. But it just goes to show you that when you set out to do something, you always have this perception of the different ways it could end. Most of the time it ends in a way that you didn't really foresee. And that was certainly true with this project. Now that we've landed that plane, I'm excited about starting the next project, which is I'm going to be working on a documentary that we're going to be doing this spring on the Blood Run area. I've told you guys a little bit about that. We've got a lot of things to iron out with the different tribes that are involved and how they will. I mean, they're very hard to negotiate and deal with as far as how they're involved and things like that. I'm learning things about this. Is a subject that I didn't come in on as an expert. So, I mean, it's a huge learning curve for me every day when we're talking about putting the documentary together and what we're going to be filming and how the storyline of how it's going to unfold. We start out thinking we were just going to make an hour and a half long thing, maybe, or an hour long thing, and just throw, something you throw out at YouTube. Maybe it ends up on Netflix. But now it's kind of evolved into trying to do it in 4 different parts and doing it with a major network. So that will be cool if it comes to fruition, which it may. It's just there's so many dots to connect to do it. And then, like you said, like Connor had mentioned, the deal that I would love to do this summer at some point with different people from our community who would have the ability to get up here and have an interest in doing that. I'd love to put something like that together, just because it's not only an opportunity for, maybe up to 10 of us who are connected in some way in the community. Maybe it's even just online. But it is a gathering that could actually have a very impactful research result that it could bring forward just because of the way it'll be done and the area it'll be done in. It'll be an adventure. Hell, if nothing happened, it's 5 days in the boundary waters up in between Canada and Minnesota. It's a pretty cool area. But other than that, everybody have a great Thanksgiving.
And I want to thank everybody. I told everybody it's going to be a deeper conversation, and I appreciate you guys coming in here. We didn't talk about the sexy Bigfoot's findings and pictures and stuff. We kind of did a deep conversation, and I appreciate you guys being on board with that. And guys, just remember, anybody in the chat, I don't tell my people coming on what we're going to be kind of talking about. I don't tell them in advance what questions I'm going to be asking. I want everything to be raw and real. I think everything you heard today is raw and real, and I just appreciate all of you for opening up and telling us your thoughts. And guys in chat, thank you guys, people in the chat, for writing down what you thought of the show and your thoughts of what's going on in life. You guys are part of this channel. Everybody's watching this. You are all part of the Gypsy Road channel.
And real quick, I just want to say channels like this are very important, like Mogion Monster, Sean G, Chasing the Truth, even How to Hunt, Dixie Cryptid. But then there's other passive ones like Canada Cryptid and Buckeye Bigfoot that if you guys want to share your encounters and just want to get it out there is passive ways that you don't have to do it live and direct or even through your voice. You can type it in and send it and email it away, and I'm sure it will be well received. And people will flock to your tribe. So there is alternate avenues, and don't be intimidated by the bullies of this community. They can't even spell skeptic right.
Beyond that, guys, I got to get going. I want to thank all of you for coming today. I'll talk to you guys later.
It's with a K, not a C.